Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show we're talking about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Colony, as well as the latest episode of Reverie. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Colony, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Reverie. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Colony. Great episode. Quite a few things went down, so let's break everything down. Obviously, the main overarching plot of this episode, the fact is that Broussard, Amy, and Will work together and they grab Snyder. I love the moment like Snyder's like us because Amy kind of drew him in. I was wondering why she was rolling up her pants. I was like, oh, this is like, oh, so she can be ready to kind of kick some ass when time comes. It's like, no, to make him think like she's not wearing anything underneath her packer. I was like, oh, that's pretty smart, kind of seducing him in a little bit. And he turns around, sees Will, he goes, oh shit, you know, he freaks out, dude, and it's time. But when it comes down to it, we find out a lot more information. Turns out I was kind of right on, my guess was right, that I was right about, like, it is kind of 2 and 2. We kind of learn more about the outlier situation. That is part of the algorithm that Kynes made. Basically, they pick a lot of people with military background. These people are what are kept in those, storage devices, like I said, like what we saw at the beginning of last week's episode. So that's what that turns out to be, and why like even the drones won't kill particular people like Broussard or Will, because they're important because of their whole algorithm thing. But it is also a situation. I was somewhat right on the weapon front because I was like, oh, like the Raps want to use them in a sense. I thought like, oh, it was a way of repairing their body. Once again, I said that was kind of my previous thought before, but it turns out that the humans themselves are the bioweapons. In what particular way, I have no idea. Like I said, the fact is that you're picking people with a military background and stuff like that must mean you need their expertise, their training, their strategies, like their way of thinking. But it's like, that's the only means I can think of, but not unless it is kind of what I thought it is. Like they need good physical bodies to be used in a sense of fighting this enemy for whatever reason. That's why I'm like, because that's the thing, like they have so many drones. Why do they need humans? Why are humans the bioweapons? Like, are they going to take all that is inside of those humans and transfer it into what is left of their species? Like, is it for the purpose of transferring some of themselves? Like, is it going to be like connecting all humans under their control, making these outliers more like puppets that they can kind of control and battle, kind of like implanted their consciousness into these humans and take control of their bodies and their minds using their skills and tactics to kind of help them win against the enemy that's coming. I don't know. Like, all we got left with was they're the human weapon, which is crazy and interesting that it's all coming down in this hour. And that's what I'm curious about too. It's like, what does Kynes have to do with all of this? Because the fact of the matter is, he's neck deep in all of this because of the technology he's gotten access to. The fact is that he's talked to the host. I mean, the fact is the facility is literally right off, like, near the walls of the city, as we know. So, is he the one that kind of made modification and have a, because obviously he had talked about it before in the past, like the algorithm he created wasn't being used the right way. So maybe he's kind of made it a lot more precise and made adjustments. And he's told that to the, host. So the question is like, what is a relationship like? What is he getting out of it? Like, obviously he's kind of ruling everything with kind of an iron fist, but he's kind of like got a sheet in front, like he's kind of performing, like got his own thing going up that he doesn't want anyone in the IGA to know about and stuff like that. So like, I'm curious to see what is he getting out of this and what is exactly that he's giving the host and for what purposes, stuff like that. Because even the weapon, even Snyder was like, I don't know what the hell that is, that thing that absorbed bullets. We ended up seeing even a drone's weapon can't be used against that. So is that going to be armor that could be used for the outliers to fight this coming enemy? Is it, because the fact is, like, the proof how powerful it is, even drones can't use it. So is it technology that Kynes actually took from them? Is he secretly kind of working on some resistance level shit and he's actually preparing the human race to fight back against them? Like, what's up with that? I mean, like I said, he's talked to him. Like, the thought, because something that Snyder says later on is like, oh, that he stole some tech from them. But, the way he talks to, when he talked to Kynes before, I mean, obviously Snyder being who he is, kind of, you have to take everything he says with a grain of salt, which comes up later on, which I'll get to in a second. But it's like, he has a relationship with the host is kind of what Snyder was kind of getting at last episode. But maybe the thing is, maybe he did have a relationship with him, got close, and stole some technology and is applying it in his own field. I'd assume it is kind of all above board, because there's no way they're going to let their own technology slip away without them knowing. Not unless he's kept that shit super under wraps that they don't know about what's going on. So, but it seems like we kind of finally got an understanding about that, like a bigger step in that direction. Granted, we still don't know 100% what that's all about. Like I said, it's like in what shape or form are they bioweapons, and how that's going to be operated, like how they're going to be weaponized. Like I said, we'll still kind of have to wait and see. But you had Rassar being like, all right, let's go. But Amy was like, shoot, we can't really do that. We shouldn't do that. You know this isn't right. But Rassar's like, this is the deal we made. And she kept trying to talk to Will, being like, oh, you know, people with PTSD. But like, no, he's like, no, shut up. I don't want to know. Leave. And he interrogates Snyder and ends up telling him like, hey, because Snyder being who he is, and that's the craziest thing, even under these circumstances, Snyder is still this silver-tongued rat that he is, because he can't tell the truth to Brian, because they're like, okay, is anyone gonna be missing you? He's like, no. And then like Bram, who's a part of this, which completely caught me off guard, he turns on his radio to let them know, like, oh yeah, people are looking for him. It's like, I didn't know, I must have missed a meeting or something. It's like, you slime ball, you knew exactly, because you lied and said like, oh, no one will be missing. It's like, wait, isn't that a lie? Because he's got the 2 security guards out front, and like he's got a meeting, so he was supposed to be back in 5 minutes, but he lied through his teeth like normal. He's like, no, I must have forgotten something. That's like, you lying. Then when it came to the whole like admitting what happened with Charlie, he was like, no, that wasn't me. I didn't signal out the signal. No. It must have been with McGregor turned on the hose. He must have activated some signal. That's how it's like, you are full of crap. You gave Vincent the word he needed to send out them. It's like, it's because he knows that if he tells the truth, he's going to die. Because that was from the beginning. He was like, hey, guarantee me I'm going to live. Brassard's like, I'm not going to give you no guarantee. But do know the longer you talk, the more likely you are to keep breathing. But it's like, he can't tell the truth for anything. Because he's like, no, this wasn't on me. I wasn't the one to pull the trigger. He's like, fine, you need someone to blame. It's like, you lying fuck, it's you. I'm sorry for my language. I'm going crazy with it. I apologize, but it's like, you're such a slime ball and you're lying. You had a hand in it. You're just as guilty, because he knows if he admits guilt, because even Will's like, admit the truth before you die, and die like a man with a clear conscience. Maybe it's just because in his circle, who he is, he can't accept responsibility. He's like, no. I need to like, I can't, you know, because he wants to still try and find a way out of this, but he's like, and he even tries to turn it on Will, being like, no, if we had just left the camp when I wanted to, we wouldn't have been in that situation. It's like, how dare you try to put this back on Will like it's his fault for not taking your word. You were going to turn them in the first place. You're the one that got so close to their family for like 6 months. Even he's like, yeah, I cared about that kid. I care about your kids. In fact, this Uncle Alan and stuff like that, and how hard it was for Charlie dying what hit him, because he said something that was kind of interesting. He was like, I gave Charlie a proper burial. And he was like, yeah, I saw Charlie under the tarp, I saw his face, and you know, and obviously it did bother him. But I'm wondering, was he telling the truth when he said like, oh, I buried him, I gave him a proper burial? I don't know. The last time we saw, he put the tarp back, but I mean, who's to say he didn't give him a proper burial? Because the fact is, I don't think he did, because the fact of the matter is, he wouldn't have looked at those crime photos, the photos that were taken, and saw Charlie's face again. I don't think he would have saw that. Like, I feel like they would have given us a moment like that if Snyder had actually done something like that. He was trying to make Will feel like a little less, oh, no, he did get. It's like, no, I personally think that was another lie, because there's no way he would have done that, because he couldn't face Charlie, because it would be facing what he did. And I don't think he was ready to face what he had done like that. He was responsible, because for the first time he had to fully look face to face with what his decisions made, because other people, once again, it's faces people he doesn't know, he doesn't care about. This is a kid he spent 6 months caring about, helping grow and, you know, protect and teach. So it's like, you got attached to this kid, you got attached to this family, and you feel responsible, especially coming from a dude who's been separated from his own daughter, doesn't know where she is. So, you know, he latched onto these kids as well, you know, on that same level. I kind of felt bad when Will was drowning him in the toilet. Not only was, it was kind of probably like the toilet probably hadn't been used, but he dumped all that like mop water in it. So it's super nasty and just, I'm like, I was kind of waiting to see what Will was going to do. I was like, Will kill him or not? But turns out he didn't. Which led to Bran being like, no, I'm going to come in there and handle it. Which Will's kind of like, no, you know, once you kill somebody, no matter what the circumstances is, even if a piece of crap like Snyder, that stuff will stay with you, it won't go away. And he talks about, yeah, he knows the green zone is. And I'm like, right, they don't know about that at all, do they? It's like, yeah, he was there during the whole green zone incident, obviously referencing what happened in season 2. And he's like, yeah, that guy, it's a bad guy, but he's nowhere near as bad as Snyder is. And also for him, it's like, for Bram, it's like, yeah, what he did at the camp, lining his 3 friends up, getting them killed one by one, didn't have the stones to pull the trigger himself, got someone else to do it. But for Bram, it's like, it's my fault this happened. I knew exactly who Snyder was because he saw a side of Snyder that even Will had never seen before. Like, he knew Snyder was kind of a slime ball, but like, Bram saw that side of him even more. But it's like, even with that, I still defended him and brought him along. Charlie would be alive if it wasn't for me. Because both of them, like, that's what this all comes down to, is both of them needed to take their rage out on Snyder because they were all both like bottling up all their rage and hate towards themselves. That's why Will's kind of been, like, obviously Amy got it right. Like, that's what this has all been about. Like, Will's been internalizing everything he's felt, all his rage. And even without fully knowing exactly everything, Will pretty much figured it out because Will's not an idiot. Because Snyder forgets, it's like, yeah, for Will too, it's like, he's even said himself, it's like, you forget how much I actually had to do for you to get Charlie just to end up having him die, you know? He had to do a lot of dirty work for Snyder. So it's like, don't pretend like you're some innocent person. Like, yeah, Snyder has done a lot of stuff over the course of the series, all stuff in his personal interest. Yes, he was going to walk away from it. He's like, oh, I'm going to take full advantage of it. Maybe because at first he didn't want to, prophesize off of like all that he had done. To be fair, he still did it anyway because it's like, oh, I'm going to live my life cozy, but it wasn't enough kind of backing away to kind of get rid of it all, kind of not wallow in his own sadness. He needed to get to work immediately to kind of block everything out from his head. I think that was his main reason for getting back into work. Because I was wondering, did he have an ulterior motive or something? Like, oh, was he secretly going to help or something? It's like, no. He just needed to get to work. He couldn't, because he knew if he just sat back and relaxed, his mind would wander and he'd think about that, and he couldn't let himself drown in that. So it's like keeping himself busy forces him not to think about it. But confronting Will, I think, makes it so that's probably all he's going to be able to think about going forward. So, like I said, some interesting developments. Will actually lets him go. It's interesting because Amy was like, yeah, we're never working with him again. Like, there's a difference between damage and suicide, or the fact of the matter is, like, because even Broussard's like, it was his kid. And she pauses for a second, but even she's like, yeah, but it's like, you only let him slide because you and the Bowmans have history. If it was me, you wouldn't let none of that slide. And she's like, I'm not working with him anymore. And Broussard's like, okay, and walks away. I wonder where her mind changed, because for her, it's like, we could use Snyder. We shouldn't have let him kill Snyder. Obviously, they don't know that Snyder's still alive. So I'm curious when the time comes, what's going to happen there with that whole situation? Because once again, it's that same situation with Will. It's like, probably some of that's true, but it's like, hey, you never know with Snyder what's actually true or not. Even if you kept him around, he'd always been sneaking and trying to worm a way out of a situation. But it's like, you don't know if anything he says is true. Like, a lot of the outlier situation, I believe him. It's interesting because originally they were being sent to space, which, I mean, to be fair, that's kind of where the factory was, but maybe that's not exactly where they were going. We haven't actually seen it too often, but there's ships out there. Like, how many ships do they actually have? They have like one gigantic ship with multiple little ships, or they're multiple big ships. They've got like, how their whole like setup is. We've never really gotten a full look at all that is the Raps, at least, out there in space. But, now that, it must be the factory, because now that the fact is that they are kind of keeping everything on Earth, keeping these outliers in cold storage, must mean that it was the factory on the moon that they were being sent to. So that's the only thing I can think about. So, because I thought it was kind of strange myself that, like, at the beginning of the episode, Will had that moment where he was up. Even Gracie's like, "What are you doing up?" Because normally he sleeps through the day and it's just working at night. I think that's kind of his way to avoid being around both Katie and just really interacting too much with his family, just because it's like I said, just kind of caught up in his own melancholy, And even Katie, I think, was kind of caught off guard because he was like, "Have a good day at work," and she was like, "Thanks." Even though I was kind of like, okay, that's weird, because even Gracie's caught off guard by it. But then it's like, oh, Bram's a part of it. It's like, oh, is Katie a part of this? It's like, no, it turns out that Katie and Gracie had no idea about what was going on with Snyder. I don't know if even Gracie completely comprehends what really happened. I mean, she's smart, but she's still young, so I don't know if she pieced it together like Alan's the reason behind all this. Like, everyone else has. They know that Snyder was behind this. The gray hat showing up like they did, killing everyone. It's like, that's no coincidence, so... But Will comes home later and he kind of breaks down, and Katie's there too. Like, because it's for him probably ever since the Charlie thing happened, it's just kind of like, oh, I got to make sure the rest of my family's okay. Like I said, he's been internalizing all of that. Like when they were on the road trying to get their way to Seattle, like he was internalizing a lot of that, and he probably hasn't said a word about it subsequently since. Like he's just, like I said, been bottling it up until he finally exploded. Because even what Amy said was true. Like him killing Snyder wouldn't undo all that. Like it wouldn't make anything better. It'd probably make him sink even harder. So you just, that them crying is just him finally opening up, and you know, it kind of makes Katie cry too, because like we're finally going to talk about it. We've just been like, Will's probably hasn't wanted to talk about it, and you know, maybe Katie has wanted to, but you know, as we saw in the last episode, she kind of wants to talk, but he doesn't want to. He kind of pushes her away. Like, you know, everyone handles grief in our own way. So you know, once again, I think that's why Katie went so hard into like her job, because she's like, oh, helping other families so they don't have to go through what she went through, even helping a family that went through a similar thing that they did, losing a child on a road, you know. So but I'm curious to see what happens going forward with this, because when it's all said and done, like he'll probably break everything down, tell her about like Amy and Broussard, and then they'll probably fully work together. And it's like, what about Snyder? It's like, he's still alive, so that'll probably change things. Maybe Amy will be more aligned with working, especially when everything is out and open. You know, because Katie's found out the truth a little bit about Seattle, and combined with what Will probably learned, like then she'll probably be more inclined, because we do know that this is all about a labor force too. So that's what's happening to all those people being shipped off on the bus. The people, Katie's like, oh, what's up with them? Once again, like, you know, she told said that dude's family that dude was a construction worker, so it had to be part of the construction of like whatever machine they're trying to hook all these humans up to, like why they need construction and stuff like that, you know. So like I said, now we know that, you know, either these humans are going to be used as the batteries for it, they're going to be a part of it in a sense, you know. Once again, like I brought up earlier, how I feel like they might utilize humans weaponry wise, I don't know, like I said. So it's definitely going to be interesting going forward, obviously, like what this means for Bram. I did like at the beginning, they did kind of give it a different perspective, kind of showed you the other side of things, like of the, like what went down last episode, kind of showing you the other side of it. So, but I'm very curious to see like what Bram's relationship like going to be going forward with Will. Like obviously there's going to be a little resentment there, but now it's potentially out there and open, like what's going to happen between all of them. Is this going to be more inclined to Bram trying to track down and deal with Snyder on his own? You know, what's he going to do? Well, it's going to incline him to move away from his family, because he was planning on getting his own place anyway. That's the whole point of taking his job. I don't know. I'm also curious about like Snyder. It's kind of an interesting thing. Snyder didn't rat on them. Like when Snyder was asked what happened, he was like, yeah, I spent some time with a lady. What I do in my own personal time, I didn't know it was that big of an issue. And he's like going back to his room, because once again, he feels guilt about it. Like I said, he's been running away from it, and that guilt came rushing back when he saw Will again. And because it probably made him feel even worse, because he knew he was lying through his teeth about certain things, knowing that he was responsible heavily in what happened to Charlie, because he wants to be like, oh, maybe it was McGregor turning the hose back on in the signal and stuff like that, knowing that you gave the code to Vincent to lead to the assault. Like, you're the reason why Charlie died, you know? Because even he tried to be like, oh, if Charlie had been just 2 feet the other way, like, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It's like, maybe you wouldn't, but that doesn't matter about what could have been. We're living in what happened and what is, you know? So like I said, overall, a great episode. That confrontation was so good. I think that was kind of like just a well done episode in that regard, about what was just going on, like his personal story like that. So, like I said, I'm very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us, because we do have Snyder still staying in Seattle, which obviously kind is kind of like, oh yeah, sure, whatever. But even he's making sure to keep an eye on Snyder, because he knows the IGA sent him there to sneak. And the fact is that he's staying is kind of like, okay, did they find anything? Plus, obviously, they got to be covering up everything that happened with the whole weapon that was stolen from by Broussard and Amy. So, like, obviously he's going to try and keep that under wraps, but that's still a problem. So what this all takes us in the next episode, we'll just kind of have to wait and see. And now moving on to this week's episode of Reverie, a great episode. I feel like this is the most, like, so far, a very powerful, impactful episode in just, like, the circumstances of what's going on in the world. And obviously, a bomb goes off at a building and a lot of people die and get hurt. basically one of the people that survived it is, her name's Denise Lang, but basically she's like the only survivor of it, and she's kind of in a position where she's dying from her injuries, and they want to hook Mara up to a Reverie to get inside of her head, because it's like, oh, this is the perfect example of what this device can be used for. Obviously, a lot of different people have different things against this. It's kind of interesting, because it kind of plays into the episode a little bit, is how Alexis is kind of all for it at first, because for her it's like, oh, we've never actually used it on someone that's been in a coma outright before. Like, this is someone from the outside being, because it's like, oh, we're hooking up to a Reverie, and then the other people have been in the comas because they were inside the Reverie and they just never came out of their own free will. So circumstances are different this time. So for her it's like, oh, we've never been under these circumstances before, it'd be a great time to test it out. But obviously Paul has his reservations, because it's like, yeah, like, we have no idea what that might do. Even Charlie's like, well, what will happen if Mara's inside when Denise dies? What would that be? And even Paul's like, I have no idea, because it's never happened before. So, but Mara decides to do it because for her, it's like, obviously, Monica tries to like manipulate her by having the pictures there, knowing that Mara would look through them. But, Mara would have done it nonetheless, just because of the circumstances around, like, okay, we need to stop these other bombs, because there's a dude named Silas behind it, and he's setting off these bombs. It's trying to make a statement about, like, oh, the stuff that the government's done in certain areas. It's like they've polluted certain areas and people are dying from it. It's like, clean the areas up and do all this, taking the more like eco-terrorist type of point of view, essentially. So it turns out her name's not even really Denise. She's actually, her real name's Ashley Trent. She was basically snuck in there using a fake ID and stuff like that. Like, she's part of Silas's team and stuff like that. Because, a lot of stuff was interesting about this episode, because normally, like, reveries are created by the people. Like, obviously, Mara's going into pre-made reveries. It's like, no, for these circumstances, Paul and the team had to make a reverie. And it was kind of a rush job, too. So he went in to kind of shake everything out. Obviously, some of the people weren't complete, because you saw one dude in particular, like, you could see the data in his, like, from the back of his head, like, of the reverie. It's like, yeah, we need to fix that. Kind of fine-tuning it a bit in such a small amount of time. It worked decently well, but even under the circumstances, even Ashley wasn't completely full, because eventually she's like, okay, things are weird here. I can't open any doors, because I guess it's because when it's like a sound reverie that you create for yourself, because a lot of times most people go into the reverie knowing it's fake anyway, and they just kind of accept it because it feels so real. But for her, it's like, oh, it didn't seem right at the beginning. Because at first you could tell it hit Mara, because it's like, well, there's people, like, in particular, she sees a little girl that dies in the explosion, which I'm sure, just because it's like, oh man, like, you're seeing the little girl that had died, and now you're seeing her walking around. I'm sure, like, thinking of her niece Bryn kind of, like, hit that sore spot too, but I think it's just the circumstances themselves, which is terrible circumstances. So now it's a rush against the clock. But, like I said, Ashley's also dying at the same time, and I think probably, like, in my personal opinion, and this is like, so far, like, a lot of episodes have been great, but I feel like this was probably like the episode that really kind of got me like very tear jerked and everything, because like, obviously, like, they're trying this, they're trying that to get Ashley to open up, but nothing's working. But then Mara tells her the truth, because like, Ashley's always been lied to in her life. Like, obviously, everyone's had their different reasons. Obviously, like, her mom hid a lot of the stuff about what her dad did and why he's in jail for scamming a lot of people out of their money, but her mom tried to protect her from it, but her mom is like, no, I wasn't doing that to protect her. I was just trying to shield her from it, in a sense of like, I'm trying to forget it myself. So by like not really talking to her about, not really explaining things, I'm kind of running away from it myself without acknowledging, trying to forget it even happened. So Ashley's spent most of her life being like told not the truth, and Mara decided like what Ashley wanted more than anything else was to be told the truth, and she explained everything, the reverie, her condition, what was going down in the railroad, and it was just kind of sad. I mean, I feel so heartbroken that nothing could be done for her. Like, it was just kind of like I said, a race against the clock. But those moments, just like the final moments in the episode when she's talking to Ashley's mom, and like those tears, like once, just fantastic acting on their part, because like that, like her mom breaking down and even Mara crying, like I was kind of choking up a little bit. I was like, man, because it's like for her, it's like her and her daughter hadn't been on good terms in a while. Like she hasn't even talked to her daughter in a year. She kind of blames herself because she feels like she failed her, with everything that she's done. But it's like, no matter what, Mara's message from her was kind of, Ashley's final message before going on. It's like, hey, like, I love you, Mom. Like, don't think I always love you, And in the end, she ended up helping stopping the bomb. So it's just, like I said, it leaves you bittersweet because it's just kind of like, yeah, things worked out in the end, but it's just kind of sad that things played out like that. Because even for her, it's like she was just manipulated because Silas, for one, lied to her multiple ways. One saying like, oh, we're family, and he knew about her circumstances with her dad and everything, like her problems with her mom too, that he took advantage of that, saying, oh, we're family. He promised her that no one would get hurt because the bomb was supposed to go off 9 hours later, but it went off in like 45 seconds. There was no time to get anyone out, and so many people died because of it. So it's just a terrible situation all around. Like I said, it set up a lot of precedents because even Paul talked about it, because like obviously the cabin that Ashley ended up making, even in that situation, she actually subconsciously created her own reverie, because like the reverie kind of like took what was already kind of the strongest thing in her mind at the time, and that was just that cabin, because that cabin was so connected to her and her family, like a lot of good times there. Her mom reading her Alice in Wonderland a lot there, and just like it's probably one of the few times like their family wasn't just caught up in the whole situation. I mean, because a lot of her life wasn't great because of her dad's circumstances. Like there were civil suits against their family, and it just kind of got ran through the mud because of that. But even Paul was kind of surprised by that situation, because it was like, because it was so powerful in her subconscious, like it kind of was her refuge from just everything. Because even the circumstances in the bank was just, that was kind of overwhelming, because it's like, she never wanted to go through with this. It's like, she didn't believe in Silas's message anymore, because like, oh, we're supposed to send a message, but not to the point other people get hurt. So just to kind of pull herself away from that, her subconscious created this other place, so. And on top of that, like I said, the circumstances of what it's like to be in a reverie when someone's about to die, it started falling apart, and Mara tried to use Exodus to get out, but it wouldn't work. So she had to physically go to the exit while the world is literally falling apart. It's like the question is, like, if Mara had stayed there, would she have been lost in an empty void? Would she be in a coma herself? Would her consciousness be lost? Would she, what would that all turn out to be? Like, so many questions in that department. So, but luckily we don't have to worry about finding that out, because luckily enough, Mara was able to get out. But it doesn't just stop there with the aspect of the episode that I thought was kind of neat. It is the whole Monica angle, because this might have been something I remember bringing up before, like the question of like, well, what the hell would the DOD use this for? I felt like it probably wouldn't be the best of circumstances that they'd probably use this for. Like Monica tries to spin it because Charlie didn't appreciate this whole circumstance, because it was kind of like, you're kind of rushing us on this. Yeah, there's good intentions, stuff like that, but for him it's like, I know you're bullshitting us. I know the fact of the matter is, this isn't just about trying to catch this bad guy. It's about showing your bosses like, hey, this is actually what the DOD's investing in, because then they only see like the 1.0 that people are using recreationally. It's like, no, 2.0, we can do so much with it. We can help with PTSD, training, strategy. And then Charlie was like, intelligence gathering. I figured as much. Because to me, I also interpret that as like, I kind of feel like it could be used for more nefarious things, in a sense of torturing people. It's like you create these reveries, these prisons to house people, to break them. But also the fact of the matter is, you can use it in this regard. You can shape the reveries into whatever you need them to be, to make it feel as real as possible, to essentially break someone's mind. So that's a more bad end of the things. I'm sure that's kind of what Charlie was getting at when he was like, oh, intelligence gathering, in that sense, without really using the exact words. But I'm sure that's kind of what he was kind of getting at, which even like Monica was like, oh, don't try and pretend like you should care more about her. You don't care about her, Mara, as much as you do these other people. More so, like, the fact is that Charlie's, I think in her mind, like what she was trying to say is that he cares so much more about making sure everything is good with the company and stuff like that, that you're more caring about these other people than what would happen to Mara, which is not true. Like, Charlie cares a lot about Mara, because every time it's like, yo, Mara, are you okay? Are you sure about doing this? Much like Paul, because like Mara was like, are you okay with doing all this? And Paul was like, no, I'm not. But since you're sure about doing it, we're going to make sure every precaution is taken to make sure that it's safe for you, and it's like everyone's got her back, and I thought it was kind of neat. But like I said, because every turn, like, she is very important to him, to the point like he's just kind of like, no, we got to make sure everything is okay. And like I said before, like, I feel like I had the wrong idea about Charlie. Turns out Charlie's actually kind of a pretty good dude, unless something else comes out, and then I'm gonna be like, F you, Charlie, again, probably. But for right now, once again, it seems like all my reservations about him have kind of been turned around, like obviously after last week's episode. But now it seems like everything's good, between me and Charlie, which is weird to say, but nevertheless, I just thought that was kind of an interesting aspect. It actually turns out they put a huge chunk into this company too. Like, they own at least like 30% of it or so, which is like, that's a third of this company that they own, which is like, of course, they have a big say in how things kind of run, which obviously Alexis doesn't like. But Charlie's like, you literally wanted to not have no idea about like the contents of how this whole thing works, because for her it's like, no, they know about the source code, so they're allowed to do whatever they want with it. It's like, didn't have my permission to do that. It's like, you don't want any of the details, and I did this because for her it's like, this is her project, this is her baby. She doesn't want anyone using it all willy-nilly like how they want to. It's kind of what she's getting at. It's like, I want it to be used for these purposes. I don't want them to take it and do whatever they want with it, because if they're the source code, they can do that. But for Charlie, for him, it's like, Alexis is so caught up in doing work. It's because she's trying to push herself away from everything. Because for him, it's just kind of like, it's almost like for him saying like, you need to be a little more empathetic. So for example, let's take the example of like how like when Monica was talking and she was kind of like, oh yeah, this sounds more like your issue, not mine. And she kind of left to go back to work. Once again, the whole thing about what I was saying earlier about how she was kind of like, oh yeah, like this would be a great opportunity to see the program. Like she kind of didn't come at it from a human point of view. Once again, it seems like a lot of times when it comes to the people involved and stuff like that, she kind of distances herself, just kind of like, oh yeah, just do whatever you got to do, more. I really don't care. Just because it's like, I think it's just who she is, because of just whatever her upbringing is, probably the circumstances around her brother. She's probably cut herself off from people. She's invested so much in this program that's kind of become her baby, that's kind of become her everything, that she kind of let her social aspects and just, for her, it's just like, oh, I don't need to be like caught up on social pleasantries just to do this job. It's like, I can be fine just doing it. But for Charlie, it's like, no, it's more than that. Experience, notice the people around you, notice the people that are being affected by this program and stuff like that. So that's why I feel like more so than anything, that's why he protects this. It's not more so about him, it's more so about Alexis, because he's kind of the one that kind of handles things in her place, because she doesn't want to be caught up in all the small stuff. It's like she wants to be the bigger idea person. He's more the finer details of making sure, for one, getting the money that they needed to make sure all this happens. It's like, yeah, we both knew there would be kind of strings attached to us making this deal with the government, giving us the money we need, and one of these said strings is this certain circumstances that we find ourselves in. So, but once again, it's kind of a nice aspect of him trying to get that through to her, to be more empathetic. I mean, sadly, she got caught up in everything with the whole Edith situation, seeing Edith kill herself in front of her, which later on she says it didn't bother her, because Charlie talked about the fact is, like, the first time he ever saw someone die was a friend of his when he was 15. The friend was high, kind of reached out, fell 12 stories. And to him, it's like he talks about it all the time because it makes it more manageable, like, so that he can, it's his way of handling it, it's actually talking about it. And that if Alexis ever wants to talk about the Edith situation, but she was like, that's not the first person I've ever seen die from. And he was like, he knows, because he knew that if he probably said exactly, most likely I would assume it'd be Dylan, that if he did say that, like, she'd probably deny it or something. So he just used Edith as an example, but he's like, yeah, I know it isn't, but if at any point in time you want to talk about it, but might have been someone else in particular that they were referencing besides Dylan, but at the time I'm kind of assuming Dylan. But we do see that she's saying like she's okay and she's not talking about it, but she still says thanks to Charlie. But we see on the computer she's looking at Edith's social media, because I think it's kind of like, for her, that's still kind of a surreal thing of like, that's someone who lived a life. They're right there and then they're going the next. So like, it's like, here's someone you didn't really know, but I guess to know they exist, to remember that they exist, and they're just going, like, it's to kind of learn about them, see who they kind of were before all of that. And I guess that was kind of what she was trying to see, like, see Edith as a person, not just as someone that was here 1 second and gone, kind of really know that she was here, she lived, she existed, type of thing. Kind of make it so that, once again, like, she isn't just someone that's, there's more to her than that, It was just kind of an interesting aspect to the episode. So, but I did also like at the end, everyone kind of came together, job well done, drinking. It's like, oh wow, that's so interesting to me. Like I said, I even had my thoughts that Monica might be kind of seen as an antagonist to a certain sense, but it's like, oh, she's an ally. For now, things might get ugly and complicated later on, but for now, it's like, hey, everyone worked together. They made sure that everything worked out. We might see more things like this potentially in the future, especially with Mara having her skills set that she does, and then, like I said, the DoD having a good stake in this company. So it's going to be interesting to see whether we'll see a lot more of this going forward, just a little bit, especially while Oniron also has to deal with the whole, like, circumstances of people getting stuck inside too, and Mara dragging them out in that regard. Like, obviously that's still an aspect of like, yeah, that's still kind of happening more and more, but the DoD was kind of like, well, Monica in particular was like, oh, we're not going to be covering that up forever, you know, so Charlie needs to rein that in. So I'm sure Alexis and Paul and many others are kind of working on that issue right now, but more so Alexis, because it's mainly her kind of at the top working on this situation. So like I said, overall a great episode. Like I said, it probably like, I feel like this is the episode that really kind of like ooh, it hits you, just because of the whole Ashley storyline. Just kind of, like I said, sucker punched it hard, you know. So, but I'm very interested to see what goes down in the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good